Fate Grand Order is a spin-off gacha game based on its more popular counterpart, Fate Stay Night. Grand Order is known for a few things. It's absolutely atrocious gacha rates, grindy gameplay, and gender bending. Yay! But beneath all that dog shit hides something truly beautiful not a lot of people talk about, or at least not in the wider anime community. It has some of the most well-written and impressive narrative storyline, along with a well-thought-out thematic storyline. It has mythical and historical figures, alien gods, dinosaur people, and artificial intelligence that lives on the moon. Yet, somehow making all of that make sense. So, stick around as I slowly lose my mind trying to talk about this game. If you haven't noticed yet, this video is about Fate Grand Order, or FGO, its abbreviation. I'm gonna make things very clear. FGO is a terrible offender of gacha games. Everyone and their mothers knows this, so you may wonder, why FGO? Why make this video? What is the appeal of FGO? Because in Genshin or Wuthering Waves, it's very clear what these games have to offer. You got these cool characters with their cool cutscenes and an exciting new world to explore. But in FGO, it doesn't look particularly exciting. At a surface level glance, the gameplay, while moderately fun, can be grindy and old-fashioned. Something that isn't particularly exciting to newcomers. I can tell you what the gameplay does well, what it's awful at, and what its meta looks like. But a lot of people have already done that, so I'm just not gonna say that much about its gameplay. Most of the story, however, is told through the old visual novel formats like in the original Fate Stay Night Arrow Gaze, and yes, the original Fate Stay Night visual novels were definitely Arrow Gaze. The game doesn't have any cutscenes at all. All the animated cutscenes in this video are from its very high budgeted animes, MVs, and PVs. So back to the topic. Why FGO? Its gameplay ain't flashy, it doesn't have cutscenes, and its gacha is by far the worst thing that gacha has ever produced. But what it does have is some of the most impactful, emotional, and heartfelt stories ever told by gacha games, or in video games in general. Its characters and stories are what makes so many people still so loyal to this game after a decade since launch. From seeing MASH slowly learning about what it means to save humanity, all the way to Babylon's Last Stand and everything in between, it introduces you to these larger-than-life characters who gives you that one line of dialogue or that one defining moment, making you feel something you have never felt before. That, to me, is the core of Fate Grand Order. This video is meant to be sort of like an introduction to FGO, but if you're a functioning member of society that is not willing to spend 145 hours to play this game, it's completely understandable. I will only explain the entire story up until part 1, or better known as the Seven Singularities. We call it the Seven Singularities, but there are like actually 9 of them. But whatever. Part 1 covers Fuyuki, which is the town in Fate Zero and Fate Stay Night, Orleans, which is France, Septum, which is Rome, Oceanus, which is, I guess, the ocean, London, yeah, E Pluribus Unum, which is America, Camelot, Babylonia, and the last one being Solomon. So, you may be wondering, what the hell even is a singularity? Don't worry about it. It will be explained eventually. This video is that long for a reason, and that is precisely why I'm gonna dedicate this entire first part of the video to give like a basic rundown of what you need to know going into this. Okay, let's start with some basics. Ray shifting equals time traveling. Heroic spirits are the spirits of beings that have left a mark on history. That includes scientists, artists, detectives, and occasionally even gods. But most of the time, they are mythical heroes like Hercules, or great historical figures like Napoleon. Those heroic spirits are then summoned as servants through the summoning system, or otherwise known as fate. Another way to summon servants is to use a holy grail like in Fate Stay Night, but I am pretty sure most people are already familiar with that. There are 7 classes of servants which you might also be familiar with. Those are Saber, Archer, Lancer, Rider, Assassin, Caster, and Berserker. Every single heroic spirit summoned as a servant has a unique signature move called a Noble Phantasm that defines who they are as a heroic spirit. There's actually other classes which you might not know about called the extra classes like Pretender, Foreigner, Ruler, and Avenger. So when you hear people calling their servants Saber, her name is not actually Saber. Her name is Altria. The Fate system was made by the Chaldea Security Organization, which is an organization tasked with saving the world. If you've watched some of the Fate anime, the clock tower is probably gonna be the most familiar to you. It's technically under the Mages Association, along with the Atlas Institute and the Wandering Sea of Baldanders, but the noblemen in the clock tower are so influential that the clock tower practically controls the entire Mages Association. So mages usually treat the clock tower and the Mages Association as the same entity. The clock tower is made up of 12 lords, with each of them commanding their own respective departments. Some notable lords are Lord Elmaloy II, or better known as Waver from Fate Zero, and Lord Marisbury Animusphere, the founder and first director of Chaldea. Moving on, we got the Atlas Institute. It's made up of a bunch of mages that invent a bunch of stuff like Shiba, which is a device that can observe the past and the future. Shiba was shipped off to Chaldea though, but that's another story for another time. There is a third organization called the Wandering Sea of Baldanders. It is a mysterious organization that I'm not gonna talk about that much because it's probably gonna lead to spoilers on part 2. Squashed between all 3 of those organizations is Chaldea. At the very start of the game, Chaldea is presented as this noble organization with its sole purpose being to save the world, but as you progress through the story, to say that Chaldea is a little shady would be putting it very lightly. We've gone over a lot of the world of Fate, so let's talk about what a mage even is. A few things you gotta know about being a mage is that all mages want to eventually get to the root or obtain true magic. Why do they want to do that? No one really knows, but I personally like to think that it's because of curiosity. The root is usually associated with words like the one true magic or the truth. Also, technically, mages don't use magic, they actually use mystics, which is a major distinction because magic looks like this, while mystics looks like this. Magic is sort of like, magicking something up from nothing, while mystics are just like chemistry, transferring one thing into another. So mages sort of can't really do that much. People that use powerful mystics like Archibald over here have an entire bloodline saving up their knowledge and mana into their Bloodcrest, or people like Ilya over here who was born with mystic eyes. A basic rule of thumb about mages is that 90% of them are cruel and cunning assholes like the Matos. The mages that we do follow, like Shiro, Rin, and eventually Ritsuka, are the rare few exceptions that still have a normal moral compass. The last important concept that is relevant to this video is the counterforce. It's practically just a way for writers to explain themselves out of a deus ex machina. On one side of the counterforce, we have Gaia, which is Earth's will, or the bad guy. And on the other, we have Alaya, which is humanity's will, which is also good guys. The easiest way to explain the counterforce would be when a bad guy appears, a good guy will also appear to balance things out. There is also a special case when beast class servants are summoned. A grand class servant will also be summoned to counteract that. And so, with all that exposition dumping in mind, let's finally begin with the story. The first character you are introduced to is our lifelong companion and best girl, Mash Kirilight. She wakes you, or the main character, Fujimaru Ritsuka, from sleeping in the middle of the hallway. Why is our main character doing that? I don't know. From our conversations, we learn a few things about Mash. She seems to be a very sheltered young girl, and she asks some pretty offhanded questions and calls us senpai even though we clearly haven't been here for that long. It isn't anything noteworthy or remarkable, but it's just subtle enough to get a feel for who she is. Like, also on an unrelated rant, couldn't they have found a better word to translate senpai, because it's just embarrassing saying that shit out loud. I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry if I'm being childish, but it is embarrassing, okay? Later, we are introduced to Foe. Foe's sort of like the pet mascot in Chaldea. Mash mentions how Foe only ever interacts with Ritsuka and Mash, which is slightly indicative of the other mages in Chaldea being assholes. It's sort of like how dogs only go up to the people they like. Later, we are introduced to Lev Lainor. It is apparent that he is someone of a higher ranking than us. Upon seeing Lev, Foe just completely backs his shit away from him. But Lev seems friendly enough though, and he tells us that Ritsuka is practically just a random dude that showed some compatibility for race shifting. And then Ritsuka got kidnapped to Chaldea to fill in as the 48th master of Chaldea. Lev tells Ritsuka to go to the command room for an orientation, and Ritsuka along with Mash complies. Once the duo reach the command room, the director Olga Marie Animusafir gives a few lines before Ritsuka blanks out, falls asleep, and gets dragged back to his own room. It is then we meet Dr. Romani Arkamand. We sort of catch him slacking off, but he's still a pretty chill guy. We sort of talk a little, and then Chaldea explodes. Sirens start blaring. Things are on fire. Ritsuka, being the upstanding guy that he is, goes to the command room to save Mash, but Mash is trapped under this gigantic boulder, so both of them are sort of stuck there. A few things to note about this explosion: it happened directly when the race shifting was about to start. So when the barely alive Mash and Ritsuka were in the command room, they accidentally got targeted for the race shifting. With those set of events in motion, Mash and Ritsuka get race shifted into their first singularity, the flame-contaminated city of Fuyuki. Like I said, the first singularity happens in the town where the events of Fate Zero or Fate Stay Night occurred in. We time travel to after the events of Fate Zero, specifically after the point where Kirei Kotomine touched the Holy Grail and caused the fires in the city. I am about 90% sure that Fuyuki in Fate Zero is in a different timeline than the Grand Order timeline. But that's not really relevant right now. When Ritsuka wakes up in the Singularity, he finds that Foe tagged along with him, which is cool. We like Foe. Another thing to note, Mash looks badass now. She got fused with a heroic spirit and now she can transform into a demi-servant when she's in the Singularities. Like, all of this is gonna be explained later, so don't worry about it too much right now. Later, we meet director Olga Marie, who also accidentally got transported to the Singularity. And during this part of the game, the director exposition dumps everything that I told you earlier, and then some. But the most important thing that she talks about is the Grand Order Initiative. Chaldea basically can't see into the future anymore. As in, the future literally doesn't exist anymore. And it's all thanks to these singularities. The singularities blot out and distorts the foundations of humanity. So Chaldea needs to gather 48 masters to collect these holy grails that causes these singularities. But bad news being, all the masters were in the command room that got exploded, so, humanity is pretty screwed. During these conversations, we get to know that Marie Olga is a very unlikable person, and she also talks a lot about Lasengle. The entire Singularity is framed like this giant introduction. It usually plays out like explanation first, interrupted by monsters, fight, and then repeat. That is, until you meet Caster Cuchulainn. I emphasize Caster because usually Cuchulainn appears as a lancer, but not here. To those who watched Fate Zero, you might be thinking, isn't the caster of Fate Zero Gilles de Reyes? And you'd be right. Caster Cu got summoned via Counterforce, so Caster Cuchulainn teaches Mash a thing or two about being a servant, and Mash learns how to use her noble phantasm, which is called Lord Chaldea. You should probably keep in mind about what Mash's noble phantasm is called because it's gonna be quite relevant throughout this entire game. Throughout this Singularity, Caster Cu just acts like your typical weird uncle that occasionally makes some pretty uncomfortable jokes. As far as servants go, he doesn't really make that big of an impact to the player nor to the narrative other than him secretly being Odin, but that's a story for another day. After Mash starts getting the hang of being a servant, the ragtag group heads to extract the Holy Grail. But before facing off the final boss, we fight a Shadow Amiya that goes about in the typical manner, but at the end he says some pretty interesting stuff about the Mage of Flowers and Mash's shield, which is foreshadowing of the events to come. Finally, we face off against the boss of this Singularity, Saber Alter. Mash, with some help with the rest of the group, defeats the corrupted King of Knights. Job done, world safe, if it wasn't for Left Laner showing up his ugly mug. So turns out, he is the true mastermind behind the explosion, and he reveals to us that Olga Marie is also dead. It's just that her essence got ray-shifted over to the Singularity that we were even able to interact with her at all. Laugh explains that the whole reason that Chaldea can't observe the future anymore is because of humanity being incinerated. What does that mean? You don't need to worry about it. Honestly, for a prologue, this scene was pretty brutal. Seeing Olga Marie, or at least what's left of her, just being betrayed by someone she clearly cares is really wild for an opening act of a gacha game. But unfortunately, this is where we get ray-shifted back to Chaldea. First thing back, we get greeted by Da Vinci-chan. Like, no, I am not kidding. This is Leonardo da Vinci as a servant. You can think of her as a completely separate character from the one we know. This Leonardo da Vinci has the personality and appearance of the Mona Lisa while having the intelligence of Leonardo da Vinci that we know of. But anyways, Da Vinci sends Ritsuka out to the command room where Dr. Roman informs Mash and Ritsuka they can't get help from the outside world because humanity is destroyed, it's gone, it's incinerated, with the only survivors being the people left in Chaldea. Prologue ends. With the consideration of the entirety of this game, I think this prologue, while convoluted at times, does get the job done. It successfully gives us all the info we need while setting the tone that this journey is not gonna be an easy one. But after this, let's just say the game sort of falls off for a while. For reference, this is how I would rank all the arcs in part 1, and this is how I would rank all the arcs in part 2. Some FGO players might disagree with some of these rankings, but the common consensus are the next 5 singularities are gonna be a slog to get through. It's like part 1 of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, but after that, you are gonna be witnessing peak after peak after peak. So I'm gonna try my best to summarize the next 5 singularities as quickly as I possibly can without taking away any of the story beats. The first singularity, Orleans, is set in France during the 15th century during the 100-Year War. But before we enter this singularity, we witness Ritsuka dream of a very evil lady, which is John Alter, and her evil sidekick Gilles de Rais murdering the shit out of this bishop fellow. Implies that France somehow sold her out and now she summons a bunch of evil servants to take revenge on France. After that, we pan back to Ritsuka's POV. Everyone is getting ready to ray shift, but as bad as the situation seems, with humanity being destroyed and incinerated and all, the atmosphere is still very light. Dr. Roman is making small talk, Da Vinci is still trying to justify why she should take the form of the Mona Lisa. Everything is, pretty nice and chill. In contrast to the more corporative Chaldea at the beginning, this one feels more like a bunch of oddballs standing against the world. A lot of this is accredited to Dr. Roman. Sure, he's technically the acting director of Chaldea, but he still conducts himself in this comical charisma that makes grim situations look hopeful. And with a few encouraging words from Dr. Roman and Da Vinci, we head into the actual first singularity. Mash, Ritsuka, and Foe enter the singularity. They notice a band of light is in the sky. Why is it there? Don't worry about it. After that, Ritsuka and Mash run into Jeanne d'Arc, paragon of justice, kind, caring, and most importantly, patriotic. She joins our party. The earlier singularities are structured very short and simple. The main cause of conflict, for instance, in this singularity is between John Alter and the original John's factions. So after a few skirmishes with Jalter and her servants, which includes these people that I'm too fucking lazy to name out, Ritsuka, Mash, and John decides to recruit new allies, which include Marie Antoinette, Amadeus Mozart, Siegfried, Saint George, Elizabeth Bathory, and Kiyohime. What does Kiyohime have anything to do with France? I really don't know. I have no idea why the fuck she's even here. To be completely honest, you don't need to know who any of them are because they are just not important to the story. The rest of the story can basically be summarized as Jalter having a lot of dragons. Ritsuka needs a dragon slayer to defeat them, and it just so happens that Siegfried is a dragon slayer, but Siegfried is cursed, so they need a saint to lift that curse, which just so happens that Saint George is a saint. It's a very long and meaningless goose chase, but there are some pretty good character moments mixed in, like for Marie Antoinette. Honestly, I think they did a horrible job of turning the Marie Antoinette, the one that got her head chopped off, with like this idle young Marie Antoinette that apparently loves her country a lot. Like, you really gotta suspend belief to make this work. But, you know, she has some pretty cool interactions with Mozart. Like, they mentioned that one story where Mozart proposed to Marie, which is like a semi-real historical fact. And also, she has some pretty interesting dialogue with Sensen, but I can't overlook this line of dialogue. Like, what the hell is this? I have seen Sensen's character after the Singularity in part 1.5. He gets way much more better than this. And it's just sad to see this line of dialogue exist. Like, why? All of the interactions you see in the Singularity feel like the writers are just experimenting on how the dynamics between servants should work. And you will see the fruits of their labor in the future, but right now, this is just not it. After that, Marie Antoinette sacrificed herself, which Nagale was pretty emotional. At the end, we defeat Jalter, but plot twist, the one that had the Holy Grail this entire time was Gilles de Rais. It is revealed that he summoned Jalter and wreaked havoc on France to avenge the original Jean. It's pretty basic in terms of writing, but one thing I will say, FGO knows how to write their morally grey characters, which will be more apparent in the Singularities to come. After exchanging goodbyes, Mash, Ritsuka, and Foe return back to Chaldea. After each Singularity, Mash likes to summarize her experience from each Singularity. Mash talks about how Gilles became a murderer after the death of John, how wrath, even with the best of intentions, can lead to horrible outcomes, and how all of that is part of humanity's desires. I like hearing these Mash afterthoughts. It really shows the development Mash takes through each Singularity. The next Singularity begins with a few words from Dr. Roman and Da Vinci as usual, nothing quite out of the ordinary. Ritsuka, Mash, and Foe ray-shift into the second Singularity, Septem. The second Singularity is set during the 60th AD of the Roman Empire. Just like the last time, there appears to be a band of light in the sky, and immediately after entering the Singularity, we are introduced to Nero Claudius. This Nero, as you can obviously see, is completely different from the historical Nero we know. Obviously, this Nero is a girl, and second, she isn't an asshole. But as far as the other historical events that happen around Nero's reign goes, it all seems to be the same as it happens in FGO's timeline. Nero is flamboyant, passionate, and charismatic. She seems to be even well-liked among her subjects. Nero explains to us that in this Singularity, a few servants seized a large portion of land from Rome to create the new united Roman Empire. So now Nero needs to get those territories back and defeat this new and bad united Roman Empire. Along the way, we gain new allies like Spartacus. You know, Spartacus is pretty cool. While defeating some enemies like Julius Caesar. One thing I thought was pretty cool was that young Iskandar was paired up with old Waver during a fight, which in hindsight now seems pretty underutilized, but still cool nonetheless. The main focus of this Singularity is Nero doubting herself about whether the way she rules Rome is Roman enough, and this uncertainty is detonated during the encounter with the holder of the Holy Grail, Romulus. For those who don't know, Romulus is the founder of Rome. Nero's insecurities about being a good ruler for Rome is as relatable as being a ruler for Rome can get, I guess. It is definitely a step above when compared to John Dark's writing in the first Singularity, so when Nero confronts Romulus during the final showdown, it makes for a pretty compelling climax. Romulus in the end accepts Nero and entrusts Rome to her, but before our heroes could get their hands on the Holy Grail, Lev makes an appearance. Yay! He uses the Holy Grail to summon this thing which is called a demon god. Lev mentions something about a temple and also says this thing is only one of 72 demon gods out there. Mash, Ritsuka, and Nero defeat the demon god, but in a last-ditch effort to salvage this situation, Lev summons this super OP servant Altira to destroy all of Rome, but in the process, Altira goes crazy and kills Lev. Our heroes, along with the rest of the servants, join together to finally defeat Altira. Job done, Singularity 2 over. Mash and Ritsuka say their goodbyes to Nero. It's melancholic, leaving Nero alone, knowing what happens to her in the future, yet unable to change the past. She became more and more erratic. In turn, Rome rebelled against Nero. She got banished from Rome and later she committed suicide all alone in the countryside of Rome. Returning back to Chaldea, Mash laments their sudden parting while recounting that it was a perilous journey but still believes that it was a fun and valuable experience. During this Singularity, we start to see the potential of having these historical figures using their in real life stories work in tandem with FGO's story. But for Nero, it wasn't quite there yet. In the future, we do get a different version of Nero, along with a new event that delves more into the tragic side of Nero. It is peak FGO, it is my favorite event. It's called William Harlot. If you're interested, you can probably read it off of YouTube, or maybe wait for a rerun, I guess? Ritsuka once again dreams, but this time about someone named Number 2. In the dream, we see Number 2 speaking with a silhouette that is 100% Dr. Roman. From the conversations, while Dr. Roman still remains who he is, it is implied that Number 2 is being treated like a test subject, and that this is her 5110th awakening, which makes her exactly 14 years old during this. As the conversation continues, it grows more apparent from the way Number 2 speaks that Number 2 is Mash. But before getting into the meat of the conversation, you are awoken by Foe. Ritsuka joins Mash in the command room as usual, as if nothing happened. Dr. Roman and Da Vinci tells Mash and Ritsuka that the involvement of the demon god from the last Singularity might imply the involvement of the Grand Caster, King Solomon. But Roman is skeptical of this, and nothing concrete was put to the table. As usual, Ritsuka, Mash, and Foe embark on the third Singularity, Okeanos. The Singularity is set in the 16th century, but vaguely located in the ocean. As usual, the ring of light is in the sky. You know what? After this point, I'm not even gonna point that out anymore. Like, the band of lights are always in the skies, in every single Singularity. Every single Singularity, holy shit. That is a tongue twister. Mash and Ritsuka quickly meet Francis Drake. Yes, he got gender bent into a she, but at this point, it's nothing new. Drake is a different type of character from John or Nero, While the two of them were sort of like kindred spirits in figuring things out along the way, Drake is unwavering, daring, and larger than life. The way she speaks about good and evil and her live now outlook on life makes her sort of like a guiding presence. And this is perfectly exemplified by her already finishing her voyage for the Holy Grail. The voyage included Poseidon's ass being beaten, but that's a story for another time. Anyways, Artemis/Orion, Uriel, and Asterios, or better known as the Minotaur, joins the crew on the Golden Hind, which is Drake's ship. All of them fight Blackbeard and his crew, which consists of these few NPCs, and also Hector. Blackbeard is the worst villain in this entire game. He is this disgusting joke of a character that single-handedly makes this singularity so much more harder to sit through. The gang defeats them with little to no problem, but Hector betrays Blackbeard, kidnaps Uriel, and returns to Jason's crew. Plot twist, the Agronauts are here. We got Jason, Medea, Hercules, and also Hector. Along this entire arc, a semi-romantic subplot was playing out with Uriel and Asterios. I mean, it's pretty cute. I like it. But when Uriel got kidnapped, our boy Asterios was pissed. Of course, being the bros we are, we had to back our boy up. And in the end, Asterios sacrificed himself to save Uriel by fighting off Hercules, while Ritska and the rest escape. Hercules is practically the only strong agronaut. Everyone is just sort of there. But with some help from David, they take care of Hercules and no-diffs the other agronauts. Another plot twist, Medea was the true mastermind, and she betrays Jason by transforming him into a demon god. As usual, Ritska and friends defeat them. Before dying, Medea speaks of a king, which basically confirms King Solomon is behind this whole shebang. Mash also asks David about King Solomon because David is Solomon's father, but David went to go get milk on Solomon, so he really can't say anything. Mash and Ritska parts with Drake, and she drops like a line that I think is too cool not to mention. She tells Mash sometimes sinners do saintly deeds while saints sin. That's human for you. That's us. After dropping that mad line, we return back to Chaldea. Third singularity, and as exemplified in like the line that Drake dropped, Drake's larger-than-life bravado truly makes a very big impact on Mosh. Way much more so than Nero or John. So seeing her gradually learn to become more open through the various interactions with other people is truly one of the biggest driving forces in the earlier parts of the story. She now knows how good and bad people similarly contribute to history, and she understands that the brutality born from human desire is what lets humans achieve the impossible. Heading into the fourth singularity, London, we are met with a foggy and deserted city. This singularity is set during the 19th century of London, when the Industrial Revolution was at its prime. The singularity has this magical poisonous fog. Ritska is able to withstand this fog though because he has a poison resist skill, which is an effect of him being Mash's master. Anyways, Ritska and Mash meet Mordred. They team up. Mordred is rebellious and hot-headed. I don't really get why she's here other than this place being England. This singularity is practically just a repetition of defeat new bad guy, get new ally. This repeats for a while. Some allied servants include Frankenstein's gender-bent monster, William Shakespeare, and nursery rhyme. The bad guys are fucking Mephistopheles and Charles Cabbage. This goes on for a while until we meet Makiri Zolgan, which is like the disgusting grandfather of Sakura in Heaven's Feel. There isn't really much lore implications of him being here since this isn't even the same timeline as in Fate Stay Night, but it's still a cool Easter egg. Zolgan is the one that created the fog so that he can use this holy grail to summon an extra powerful heroic spirit. He turns into a demon god to buy some time for the summoning, but he gets defeated by Mordred, Mash, and Ritsuka. Although he is successful in summoning that super strong servant in Nikola Tesla. But, Tesla's ass still got kicked. He wasn't really that strong. Lancer Altria Alter also gets summoned here because the writers were probably thinking of some kind of justification for having Mordred being in the Singularity. Her ass was also kicked by Mordred, though. If it wasn't for what's about to happen next, this Singularity probably would have gone down as the worst arc in this entire game. But luckily for London, somebody decided to piss on it. Like literally. Mash remembered they forgot about the Holy Grail at Zolgan's place, so when they went back to retrieve it, lo and behold, King Solomon fucking shows up. The sheer presence of this godlike entity momentarily paralyzes our heroes. He reveals a few pieces of information on a whim. 1. It is indeed him that sent the demon gods back across history to incinerate humanity. 2. He is the Grand Caster. And 3. All of those bands of lights we saw in the sky are his noble phantasms that will or were responsible for incinerating humanity. Each band of light is extremely powerful, comparable to the light of Excalibur according to Solomon. He summons 4 of his 72 demon gods to fight us and we get absolutely destroyed. All of our allied servants die. Mash and Mordred along with Ritsuka probably would have died too, but as Solomon puts it, he only decided to come here on a whim. Basically, he only came here to fuck with us. He compares this as taking a bathroom break after finishing a book. He is basically treating our journey like entertainment for him. That's how little of a threat he sees in us. Solomon exclaims, 4 holy grails or 1, it makes no difference to him. Ritsuka and Mash confront Solomon, demanding to know his motives for destroying humanity. Solomon admits he finds destroying humanity pretty fun. He believes humanity to be pathetic because they die. He asks Mash why she clings to life, knowing the future has no salvation, to which she is unable to answer this. And King Solomon leaves. At this point, we don't quite know how Mash thinks, but we'll get there eventually. Before parting, Mordred gives a few words of advice to Ritsuka and Mash. Mordred tells them in every era, the ones who build things are not servants. They have always been people living on the cutting edge of the future. Even though I think they horribly fumble Mordred's character, I still think that this line, it's pretty cool. It's very meaningful. With that, our heroes return home. Mash admits to Ritsuka that she too doesn't believe that life has meaning nor salvation, and who can blame her for that? From everything that we do know about her, she's a lab experiment that has and only will know about Chaldea. Heck, she hasn't even seen the world outside of Chaldea before, which perfectly leads us into the next flashback. As usual, we get another one of Ritsuka's dream/flashback thingy. Dr. Roman asks what Mash wants in celebration of her birthday. Mash answers that she wants to see the outside world, but Roman brings up that it's just straight up impossible since Chaldea is very high up and cold. It's honestly a pretty depressing sight given everything that we know about Mash's situation. Like, imagine growing up in a very small white room for all of your life for the sole purpose of turning you into a living weapon, and then just being denied a simple request to see the sky even just once. And keep in mind, Chaldea is supposed to be this beacon of hope, humanity's protectors and all that. So obviously Ritsuka feels pretty upset about it and goes to confront Roman. The reason Ritsuka goes to confront Roman now is because there is an established concept that masters can take a peek at their servants' memories through their dreams now. So Ritsuka puts more weight into these visions now. But before he even gets a chance to talk to Roman, he is interrupted by Mash stepping into the command room. As usual, Roman and Da Vinci briefs us about the singularity, and to the fifth singularity we go. This singularity, Pluribus e Unum, is set during the Revolutionary War in North America. In this singularity, there are three factions at conflict with each other. The first is the Prezi King faction. Then there's also the Celtic forces, not to be mistaken with the popular basketball organization Boston Celtics. And also there's the Resistance. The leader of the Prezi King faction is this guy, who is also Thomas Edison. I hate him. Like, why the hell does he need to exist? He is like the amalgamation of every single American president in existence, along with Thomas Edison and a lion. I hate him. His faction consists of Karna, the Indian hero, and Helena Blavatsky. I don't know who she is. They have a robot army, which is pretty cool, and then there's the Celtic factions, the bad guys, which consists of Diarmon, Fionn McCumhill. Like, I had to Google that to find out if that's actually a real name. Fergus, Beowulf, which, you know, he's pretty famous, I guess. Queen Mab, and Cuchulainn Alter. Mab is the holder of the Holy Grail in this one. She uses it to summon a big army of Celtic soldiers and also corrupts Cuchulainn into his altar form. Last but definitely least is the Resistance faction, which only consists of Geronimo, Robin Hood, Billy the Kid, and Rama. This kind of multi-faction giant battle ends up being a staple for most storylines in the future. Each servant has their own motivations while fighting under a faction that shares their common goals. Our heroes quickly meet the main servant of the singularity, Florence Nightingale. She is a berserker, pretty headstrong, stubborn, and all around pretty insane. Later, we get taken to meet Addison by Helena Blavatsky. We also meet Karna there. Karna's whole reason for joining Addison is because he wants to fight Arjuna, who is on the Celtic servant's side. Addison, like I said, is an amalgamation of all the American presidents. He has a lion head too for some reason. And like, the thing I hate most about him is that we could have had an American president servant. Like, imagine George Washington as like a saber or something, and just separated him from Thomas Edison. Like, we could have had two very cool servants, but no, they had to mix those two servants up into one lame servant. Edison's goal doesn't align with Chaldea. He personally wants to build his own country in America. That also means that us extracting the Holy Grail will disappear this singularity. It makes his entire country go Presumably, he doesn't want to resolve this singularity because he thinks that it's impossible to beat the King of Mages, which is rightfully so. King of Mages is very powerful. So that's why he believes that the best thing to do would just be to cut out his small part of history for his own kingdom. But Chaldea and Ritska do have a common enemy, and that is the Celtic army, led by Cuchulainn Alter. Even so, Ritska doesn't want to deceive Edison, so he doesn't join them. Ritska and the rest of the crew gets thrown into a prison cell because of this, but they get rescued by Geronimo and meets up with Robin Hood, Billy the Kid, and the rest of the resistance. We also meet Rama, our strongest fighter, but he got stabbed by Cuchulainn earlier and now he's cursed. They also recruit new members like Elizabeth Bathory for the 4th time now, and Bright Nero, which is completely different from the original Nero. After a botched assassination attempt, which resulted in Nero and Geronimo dying, and a prison break that included Rama getting his powers back, Nightingale successfully convinces Edison and his faction to join forces. The Chaldea Edison join forces, split into 2 groups. Once the fighting starts, Karna immediately goes for Arjuna. They had a wonderful fight, but unfortunately it had to be cut short by Cuchulainn Alter sneaking up on Karna while he was distracted. With Karna gone, the power balance shifts and Cuchulainn Alter's forces completely overpower us. Just when he's about to deal the final blow to Mash, Foe teleports Merlin here. Merlin parries the blow, and Cu Alter, not wanting to fight back with Merlin and also knowing that they already have the upper hand, retreats. Merlin blinks in and out of existence, has a brief conversation with us, and off he goes. It may seem that Merlin just straight up came out of nowhere, but his involvement with us is heavily foreshadowed. Like, remember all the way back in Fuyuki where a Mage of Flowers was mentioned? Yes, Merlin is the Mage of Flowers. So anyway, back in America, Nightingale talks no jutsu again with Arjuna to join us because Arjuna feels dishonored by the way Cuchulainn Alter killed Karna. Our heroes make their way to Washington, which is where the Celtics' base is located, and defeats Queen Mab, but in retaliation, she summons 28 demon gods thanks to her noble phantasm. Thankfully, our heroes are still putting on quite a good fight. Along with the arrival of Nikola Tesla, things are going pretty well. As you'd guess, Tesla and Edison hate each other, and I think that's a pretty cool touch. And they also get the job done. Meanwhile, Ritska and friends need to fight final form Cuchulainn Alter. After a hard-fought victory, Cuchulainn summons a real demon god because at this point it's tradition. We defeated easy and problem solved, day saved. Back to Chaldea we go. Mash admits to Ritska that even with the bad that occurred, namely the few servants that died, she had fun on their journey though. As they return back to their rooms, Mash's head starts to bleed and suddenly collapses. Dr. Roman tells us more about Mash while she's getting treatment. He tells us that Mash is an artificial human created by the previous director in order to summon a heroic spirit using her as a vessel. Hence, that's why she's called a pseudo-servant. But the thing is, the heroic spirit was not cool with Chaldea's cruel treatment of Mash. Yet, if the heroic spirit decided that it didn't want to fuse with Mash would straight up simply just die. So, in an act of defiance, the heroic spirit fused with Mash, yet remained in an inactive state so as not to let Chaldea use the heroic spirit's power. Dr. Roman also tells us that Mash's lifespan is like 10 plus-ish years, and right now she only has 1 more year left to live. Dr. Roman tells Ritska to act normal around Mash because Roman thinks that Mash is enjoying her life right now and he doesn't want to jeopardize the duo's relationship. With that heavy piece of information in mind, Mash, Ritska, and Foe enters the 6th singularity, Camelot. Camelot is straight up peak fiction. If you somehow found yourself interested with the first 5 singularities, please, I implore you, read Camelot. You can skip the visual novel segments of the first 5 singularities in the game and just play the battles to get to Camelot, or maybe you could just read Camelot off of YouTube or something. Just note that it is entirely possible to finish this game without needing to interact with the game's main gacha system. And as long as part 1's concerned, the game is not even that hard either. With all that out of the way, let's begin. The first scene is of a conversation between a man named Lucius and a mysterious voice. For simplicity's sake, I'm just gonna reveal to you that Lucius is Bedivere, one of the Knights of the Round Table. He is gonna have a very big role to play in this singularity. And the unnamed voice is Merlin, wizard and teacher to King Arthur or Altria. They are in Avalon, and from their conversations, we can deduce that Bedivere has been on some kind of very long journey. Merlin warns Bedivere that he will have to face his old allies, being the Knights of the Round Table, and at the end of the journey, he will undoubtedly die. With a final parting gift from Merlin, Bedivere sets off to his final destination, swearing that he will kill his king, which is King Arthur or Altria. The 6th singularity has the most lore out of any singularities. It is technically set in Jerusalem, 13th century AD during the end of the 9th Crusade, but there are no traces of any of that era. That's because during the Crusades, someone used the Holy Grail, killed a lot of people, and accidentally summoned Ozymandias. Ozymandias then confiscated the Holy Grail and killed a bunch of the Crusaders along with it. While all this was happening, the Lion King, another version of King Arthur, somehow mysteriously arrived in the singularity. She summons the Knights of the Round Table and killed the rest of the Crusaders. The Lion King then built Camelot, a utopian city atop of the remains of Jerusalem. And that's where our protagonists come in. This time, Mash, Fo, and Ritsuka are joined by Da Vinci. Already on to a bad start, they spawn right in the middle of a desert. After traversing for a while, they run into Hassan of the 100 Personas, which is the assassin from Fate Stay Night. Like, Hassan was kidnapping Nitocris. Nitocris is a pharaoh. She is part of Ozymandias' faction, so obviously Ritsuka, being the goody two-shoes that he is, chooses to save Nitocris. But Nitocris is suspicious of us being in cahoots with the Round Table, commenting that Mash's armor looks like something a Knight of the Round Table would wear. Nitocris then summons a Sphinx to test us, but we defeat the Sphinx thanks to a wandering Lucius, which, unbeknownst to them, was Bedivere. Our heroes exchange a few words before parting with Lucius, and Ritsuka's gang heads into the Sun King's domain with Nitocris as a guide. Obviously, the Sun King is Ozymandias. He has this giant noble phantasm called Ramesium Tentyrus, which is this pyramid spaceship thingy. He is extremely strong, having the strength comparable to Gilgamesh, while also having a personality comparable to Gilgamesh as well. He reveals to us that he is indeed in possession of the Holy Grail. However, the true source of this singularity lies with the Lion King. Ozymandias then gets a little tsundere, gives us a day of rest in his city, and then kicks us out. He's pretty cool. Our heroes make their way across the desert on a buggy that Da Vinci made with the resources that Ozymandias gave them. Da Vinci and Ritsuka use this opportunity to discuss about Dr. Roman. Da Vinci compliments Roman on keeping things running even after the loss of 80% of the staff, However, she denounces Dr. Roman's complicity in Chaldea's past unethical experiments, especially regarding MASH. While traversing to the Holy City, it is apparent that the land here is uninhabitable. We either only see dry deserts or a charred wasteland until we come across another one of the Hassans defending a group of refugees from Tristan. If you didn't know, Tristan was also another one of the Round Table Knights. Da Vinci advises Ritsuka to stand down because Tristan is apparently blessed by some kind of gift that makes him extremely strong. We quietly continue to watch as the Hassan strike a deal with Tristan by appealing to his chivalry. In exchange for Hassan's own life, Tristan will not lay a single hand on the refugees. However, as Hassan, just casually takes his own head off, Tristan immediately massacres all of the refugees by only using his fingers to pull his bow. This scene completely subverts your expectations on the Knights of the Round Table. Like, throughout this entire game, we've heard about how cool King Arthur or Altria and the Knights of the Round Table are, but now we find an assassin with a skull mask defending innocent people from this knight that's supposed to be chivalrous. But regardless, some of the refugees have no choice but to head to the Holy City since the rest of the world is a wasteland. We are informed by one of these refugees that the Holy City opens its gates to welcome new citizens during this holy selection ritual. Seeing this as the only way to infiltrate the city, our heroes head to the gates of the Holy City. The Lion King graces us with her presence and selects 3 individuals that are eligible to enter the city. And surprise, surprise, the rest of the refugees are instructed to be massacred by Gawain's army. Gawain has this cool power that whenever it's daytime, he is just invincible, so the Lion King bestows upon him a gift when every time he touches his blade, Galatine, the night turns into day. Like, that's pretty cool actually. Obviously, we get our butt blasted by Gawain, but fortunately, with the help of Bedivere, which was also looking to infiltrate the Holy City, our heroes along with a few refugees successfully escape Gawain's enclosure. Back in the Holy City, Gawain reports back his failures to capture the Chaldeans. In response, the Lion King yeets him across the city. The other knights, well, minus Gawain and also apparently minus Lancelot too, discuss how to handle the arrival of Chaldea. And Agravain suggests that because Lancelot is already outside of the city and partly also because he hates Lancelot, that Lancelot should take care of the Chaldeans. The Lion King also orders Mordred to patrol outside of the Holy City and not to return because, Mordred originally killed King Arthur in the original myths, so the two hate each other. Panning back to our heroes, things are not looking very good. On their way to a refugee village, they are surrounded by Lancelot's army almost immediately. Lancelot is the second most powerful knight in the Round Table, only behind King Arthur himself. We can't even hold a candle to Gawain, so we are pretty fucked. But Da Vinci has a plan. She heads right towards Lancelot, sacrifices herself, and explodes a magic bomb in order to slow Lancelot down, while buying time for our heroes to escape Lancelot's encirclement. Our heroes don't even have time to mourn for their friend. As the grief-stricken party continues on their journey, they notice these giant craters which were said to be villagers struck by the Lion King's judgment. At last, with many casualties, our heroes finally make it to the eastern village. The village head, Hassan of the Cursed Hand, which is another one of the Hassans, and Arash Kamingir welcomes us with open arms. We spend a few weeks at the village to let an exhausted Bedivere rest. With Arash as our guide, we help out in the village. You know, I like Arash. He is a hero from the Middle East that shoots his bow at the cost of his own life to bring peace to two kingdoms. I think his myth is pretty cool, and I also just really like FGO's version of Arash too. So yeah, he's cool in my book. Bedivere has a talk with Mash and Ritsuka. He reveals that Mash's heroic spirit is apparently the most noble member of the Round Table. That explains why a lot of people assume that she is a knight. Bedivere doesn't want to reveal her true name though, in respect for her finding out herself, I guess. It also makes for a dramatic moment down the line as well. The next day, we get word that the western village is under attack from Mordred after Arash cannonballs us all the way to the village. We fight off Mordred and her knights to a draw. Mordred slips up the holy selection will take place in a few days and how it'll destroy the lands outside of the holy city, supposedly. She also mentions that since she can't return to the holy city, she herself will perish too. But after the fight with Mordred, Bedivere was left overexhausted and he passed out. It's apparent by now that every time Bedivere uses his noble phantasm, Ergiltum, his magical silver arm, it puts him out of commission for a few days and it sort of burns him out. While he was resting, Bedivere dreams of his memories with Altria. In the flashback, Bedivere asks the king why he was chosen as a knight of the Round Table despite being so much more weaker than everyone else. The king explains that the Round Table shines not because they are an organization bound by strength alone. Everyone has a role to serve, and the reason why Bedivere was chosen is because of his compassion. Unable to give a meaningful reply, Bedivere simply went on a rant about something happy that happened to someone else, and the king gave a rare smile, for it was only someone else's happiness that made her happy. I really like this scene for a multitude of reasons. It develops Bedivere's own character while adding more depth towards Fate-Stay Knight's characterization of Altria. How everyone around her always thought she was a cruel and emotionless king. She never cried, never laughed, and never understood anyone, or was never understood. But right here, right now, it seems that even just for a little, somebody definitely understood her. And that's why I have a controversial fan theory. I believe that Bedivere is some kind of incarnation of Shiro Emiya. They both have white hair, sometimes have a prosthetic arm, and both of them prime husbando material. While Betty was resting, Mash recounts Bedivere's most famous tale to Ritsuka. After the Battle of Camlan, Bedivere took a mortally wounded King Arthur to a magical forest, thinking that it could heal King Arthur. Instead, King Arthur orders Bedivere to return his sword Excalibur to the Lady of the Lake. Twice Bedivere went up to the lake, and twice he returned with the sword, thinking that as long as Excalibur was not lost, the king would live. But Arthur was not so easily deceived by Bedivere's lies, so for the third time, Bedivere went to the lake and did as he was told. While Bedivere was resting, Mash, Ritsuka, and the two other Hassans then went on a quest to save another one of the Hassans from a fortress. They run into Xuan Zhang Sanzang, who is the Monkey King's gender bent master. And like on an unrelated note, I feel like it should be a Buddhist heresy to gender bend a monk. But like, you know what? I digress. She joins the party, she's pretty goofy, and yeah. The party rescues Hassan of Serenity and Tawara Tota, who is also Xuanzang's disciple. They also manage to kick Agravain's ass and send him back to the Holy City. After returning to the village, everyone has a feast thanks to Tota's infinite rice noble phantasm. Don't question it, please. The following day, the Hassans reveal to Ritsuka and Mash that they are planning a full-scale invasion of the Holy City. They have gathered 7,000 troops and are evenly matched in terms of numbers with the enemies, but between the knights being way much more well-equipped and their side having a Gawain and a Lancelot, they conclude that they still need much more help. It is then that Serenity suggests asking for the first Hassan's help up in the Shrine of Azrael. Cursed Arm agrees to this, and that's where our heroes go. Our heroes part with Arash, who is tasked with defending the village, because, you know, bad things might happen to the village while they are gone. Arash has a few words of advice to Betty and assures him about his secret, which is probably just him going to die if he keeps using Arigatum. Our heroes make contact with the first Hassan, and Hassan agrees to fend off Gawain for them, but he wants Ritsuka to learn more about the Lion King's action and the cause of the incineration of humanity at the Atlas Institute hidden in the desert. On their way back to the village, Tota realizes that the eastern village is under attack from Tristan and Lancelot. Our heroes swiftly deal with the NPC knights, but it was too late. Not a single survivor could be found, because Arash had already evacuated them. The angered Bedivere confronts the unempathetic Tristan, who blames all of this carnage on the Lion King. Tristan flees as he points up into the sky, showing a pillar of light falling from the sky, revealing it to be the Lion King's judgment. The secret lands Rongo Miniat. As things begin to look hopeless, a bloodied Arash rises up, knocks his bow, and aims for the skies. In the last-ditch effort to save his comrades, he releases his grip and unleashes his noble phantasm Stellar along with it. As you could probably tell, this moment is meant to be a climactic moment in both the anime and the game. The anime definitely elevated this scene to an absolutely astronomical level, to the point where I want to show this to the two people currently watching. Hi guys! But the thing I want to say most is that I probably didn't do this scene enough justice. Arash's sacrifice probably just felt like it came out of nowhere with me narrating this. But in reality, there has been a good amount of build-up leading up to this scene. Arash's character was all about self-sacrifice. There were a few scenes with him and Betty talking about self-sacrifice and what it means. And I mean, his in-game noble phantasm literally makes him sacrifice himself whenever he uses it. So when he did what he did, it just felt poetically right. Meanwhile, Tristan and Lancelot report everything back to the round table. Lancelot was not cool with the Lion King wiping out an entire village of innocents, so he goes up to the Lion King and asks, "Is Agravain manipulating you?" The Lion King is outraged by this and denies it, so he then sends Lancelot out to the desert to capture the Chaldeans as punishment. Back to our heroes, the gang minus the Hassans head to the desert in search of the Atlas Institute, while the three Hassans stay back in the village to prepare for the final assault on the holy city. Our heroes reach the Atlas Institute with a minimal amount of problems and meets future important character Sherlock Holmes. With the help of an Atlas supercomputer, Sherlock lordums a lot. He tells us the first director of Chaldea, Mersbony Animusphere, which is also Olga Mari's father, was the winner of the Fuyuki Holy Grail War, which he then used the Holy Grail to get a ton of cash, letting him create Chaldea. Shortly after, Mersbury had an assistant that joined the medical branch of Chaldea. For the smart ones out there, you've probably guessed it. It's Romani Arkaman. This is probably the reason why Sherlock and Da Vinci don't particularly 100% trust Roman. Like, you gotta remember, Marisbury was the one responsible for a bunch of shady shit in Chaldea. Sherlock also straight up tells us that Mash is Galahad, which was a very cool moment in the game, and Mash's shield is straight up just the round table. Her shield is also used as a summoning catalyst for Chaldea. So, fun fact, when you go summon, you can see Mashel's shield at the bottom there, which is like a very cool detail. Mash is generally very happy that Galahad decided to save her, and seeing her happy makes us happy too. We also find out that the Holy City is literally, physically, Rongo Miniad. Rongo Miniad is basically a vessel that can preserve 500 human souls. Sherlock, being Sherlock, deduces that Lion King's goals are to gather 500 of the purest of humanity and to preserve them from the incineration of humanity. Doing this preserves 500 humans, but the facts are, this is completely different from preserving humanity as a whole. And the Lion King doing all of this is also messing up the foundation of humanity, so naturally Chaldea stands opposed to this. Sherlock also raises a good question on why Solomon decided to incinerate humanity specifically at 2018. Is it because there's no future beyond 2018? Is it because of the 2020 pandemic? Or maybe because of something else entirely? This, in hindsight, is foreshadowing for part 2. I didn't notice at the time, but the writers were thinking very far ahead on this one. Once our heroes emerge from the Atlas Institute, they part ways with Sherlock, but that isn't the last time we see him again. Lancelot is also there to spawn camp us because, he was chasing us when we went into the Atlas Institute, but now we are out of it, he spawn camps us. But after duking it out a little, Lancelot reveals that he is actually a good guy. He has been saving some of the refugees, and also, surprise surprise, Da Vinci is alive. Also, another fun fact, Galahad's father is Lancelot, which also makes Lancelot Mash's father. Everyone pulls all their information together. Da Vinci tells us that the Lion King is King Arthur, but corrupted by Rongo Miniad, which makes her super strong. Therefore, everyone concludes that it would be best for them to get Ozymandias' help, or else they probably wouldn't stand a chance. Ritsuka and Mash also tells Da Vinci about everything going on with Roman, but Da Vinci, while acknowledging Roman can be pretty sus sometimes, assures us that Roman is undoubtedly on our side. With that, our heroes head to the Sun King's domain. Things go about as well as you guess. You fight Ozymandias, you fight Nitocris for a while. Ozymandias then turns into a demon god for some reason, but he turns back. After a little talk no jutsu from Sanzang, Ozymandias entrusts Ritsuka and Mash with the Holy Grail and decides to join them. Finally, the stage is set. and the gang prepares for a feast before the final battle. Everyone is all around pretty happy, but Mash finds a crying Bedivere alone. Bedivere admits that he is afraid of confronting the Lion King, afraid of realizing he might have made the wrong choices, wondering if there is any salvation at the end of the road. However, Mash tells of her near-death experience in the bombed Chaldean command room. There was a horrible explosion, and rubble came falling down. I lost all feeling in the lower half of my body. I knew I wouldn't last another 2 minutes. I could calculate it exactly. To be honest, it was terrifying, because when I thought about what I could do with the little time I had left, I knew there was nothing. But I had someone who held my hand. Inside those flames, I had someone who helped me. Of course, it was impossible to save me. That person was clearly aware of that too. Unlike me, that person was someone who valued their own life. Afraid of dying, the person's knees were trembling. Yet, that person thought because of me, that person would end up dying too. So that I wouldn't feel that way, that person smiled and held my hand. That person couldn't change the fact that I would die before their eyes. Then, until that final moment, that person believed that comforting me was the best thing to do. Despite all of the horrible things that were done to her and her not even knowing that much about humanity, she chose to put her faith in the goodness of humanity because of that one humane act. That is what made a miracle occur. That is what made Galahad decide to put his faith back in humanity, entrusting Mash with his shield. Mash's message is properly conveyed to Bedivere, and Betty is all cheered up. As a parting gift, Bedivere gives some advice to Mash on how to maintain her noble phantasm. On the morning of the siege on the city, the first Hassan sends us a sandstorm as cover for us. Him doing this also blots out the sun, weakening Gawain. As he promised, he distracts Gawain during the storm, while the rest of the gang heads to the entrance of the city. Our forces are outnumbered, outmatched, and outpowered, and also surrounded by the enemy, but with Sun Zhang sacrificing herself to destroy the holy city gates, our heroes successfully breach the holy city. Upon entering, Ritsuka and Mash notice that there are no civilians here. Immediately after, the ground starts shaking as a wall of light appears around the main castle. The castle starts to float up into the sky, revealing it to be the main body of Rongo Miniat, the tower at the end of time. While the lands of the era starts crumbling away from the outside in, all converging on the holy city, Mordred shows up, very pissed off, but we kick her ass no problem. Meanwhile, Ozymandias uses his noble phantasm, the Remesium Tentaris, to blast the wall of light surrounding the main castle. The Lion King blasts him back 10 times over, but with the help of Nitocris, Ozzy, at the cost of his own life, rams his spaceship/temple into the tower, damaging the wall. Ozzy, along with Nitocris, perishes as the Remesium Tentaris falls. As our heroes advance more into the city, they face Agravain and Tristan respectively. Because of their prior beef, the three Hassans fight Tristan, while Lancelot fights Agravain. Mash, Ritsuka, and Bedivere, however, heads off to face the Lion King within the throne room of the main castle. The three Hassans throw everything at Tristan: Serenity's poison, 100 personas, but both of them died, only managing to weaken Tristan. Cursed Arm finally decided to use his Cursed Arm to summon Shaitan, a demonic entity being. Tristan kills Cursed Arm at the cost of his own life. Meanwhile, Lancelot has a duel with Agravain. This fight is very intense because Lancelot likes women, while Agravain hates women. They fight, taking each other out. Also, in this fight, we get an absolute cinema moment where Agravain just says he hates women. Like his eyes are just bulging out and he's just concentrating so hard to just say that one line. It is just fucking hilarious. It's like a funny meme in the community, so yeah, it's pretty funny. Finally, we make it to the throne room, but Gawain stands in our way because I guess the first Hassan got bored now. Bedivere fights Gawain one last time, with both their convictions being tested. Gawain now fighting for the Lion King's ideals in saving the living few versus Bedivere fighting for the original King Arthur, granting Ritska and Mash a slither of a chance at overturning the incineration of humanity. Bedivere defeats Gawain though, with the dying Gawain lamenting that Bedivere should have came sooner while the Lion King still retained her humanity. Bedivere is unable to disagree, admitting that he is a truly unfaithful knight. Mash, Ritska, and Bedivere finally reach to the top of the tower to confront the Lion King. Ritska demands the Lion King's motives for abandoning the rest of the world. The Lion King announces she wants to save humanity by preserving the purest of them for all of eternity. Ritska rejects her ideals and proclaims that humans should not be preserved like butterflies on a board. But Mash cannot say the same. Our heroes do battle with the king but are unable to best her. Mash, while understanding the Lion King's ideals and aspiration, is still inspired by the humans of this era. She remusters her courage to finally find the strength to reject the Lion King's ideals. The Lion King challenges Mash's resolve by unloading everything on Mash. In response, Mash unleashes her new noble phantasm. Touched by Mash's actions, the wavering Bedivere finally regains his will to fight. We are shown a flashback of Bedivere. It reveals that in this Singularities timeline, Bedivere did not return Excalibur to the lake, making it impossible for King Arthur to pass on or return to Avalon. So the King Arthur of this singularity has been wandering the earth. The flashback also reveals that Bedivere has been carrying Excalibur and wandering the earth to find his king for a millennium and a half, revealing that Bedivere has always been human. A human granted immortality through the sacred sword's power. Merlin casted a spell to disguise Excalibur as Ergiltem and hid Bedivere's identity. As the king's memory begins to return, Bedivere's body begins to crumble. Bedivere returns Excalibur to the king for the final time. The scabbard that searched endlessly finally returned its sword to its master. With Excalibur now returned to its rightful owner, the source of this singularity has essentially disappeared. The Chaldeans have restored the foundation of humanity. Right here, the Lion King could have easily killed the Chaldeans in retribution for foiling her plan. But what I like to think is that in the end, she changed her mind because she was touched by Bedivere's selflessness. She acknowledged that sure, humans can make bad or even wrong decisions, but even so, it is those same humans that are capable of so much more greater feats. Her inaction symbolizes her entrusting humanity's will to humans and in turn to Chaldea. With that, Mash and Ritska return to Chaldea. Singularity 6 end. Once we get back, Dr. Roman informs us that Bedivere made it to the Throne of Heroes after his accomplishments in the 6th Singularity. Mash and Ritska are obviously very happy about it, and are also pretty glad with how things went in the Singularity, even though there was a lot of sadness. As usual, before we dive into the next Singularity, we get a MASH flashback of Dr. Roman telling MASH that she can only live as long as her operations in the Grand Order. As the conversation continues, Dr. Roman's gentle words devolve into words of hatred and of persuading MASH to hate the humans that made her into this living weapon, that life has no meaning and humanity is not worth saving. Immediately, MASH realizes that this person is not Roman but one of Solomon's manifestations, and MASH wakes up from the dream. MASH asks the real Roman if there is any meaning to life. Roman gives a very meaningful answer. He replies that meaning is only derived when something has ended. With that, we finally enter the final singularity, Babylon. The year is 2600 BCE in the land of Mesopotamia during the Age of Gods. In an era where gods walk amongst men and beasts ravage the earth, we make our entrance with little to no problems. And a goddess lands on us. We are introduced to Ishtar. She is a pseudo-servant that uses Rin Tosaka, the one in Fate Stay Night, as a vessel. Don't question it. I have no idea how Rin Tosaka made it here. I don't want to know, okay? I'm not explaining it. She speeds off after rudely using us as cushions, and then we are also introduced to Enkidu. Enkidu is King Gilgamesh's best friend in the Epic of Gilgamesh. Enkidu technically also is genderless, so do with that information however you want. Enkidu explains a lot of shit happening on the Singularity. There's a three-goddess alliance. One of the goddess, Tiamat, births demonic beasts to kill humans. 80% of humans have been wiped out off the face of Babylon. The last remaining humans built this wall to survive, with King Gilgamesh leading them. Also, while we are walking, we should be heading north towards where Uruk is at, the capital, but Enkidu guides us all the way to Cedar Woods, which is this way, where he wants us to ride a boat up to Uruk. Turns out Enkidu is actually a bad guy and that he's actually Tiamat's son, and he wants to kidnap us by leading us into a trap. Luckily, Merlin is also at the woods, so he stops him. Along with Merlin, we are also introduced to one of Merlin's companions, Anna. Anna is an adorable little creature. She hates humans and kills gods. Obviously, we can trust Merlin since Merlin has been helping us out along the way now. So he takes us to Uruk to meet the king. Before entering the city, Ritsuka and Mash has some doubts about things going well in the city since, King Gilgamesh is not a good person, especially if you watched or read Fate Stay Night. But surprisingly, as the gang reached the gates of the city, the gatekeeper treated us very well, and he even gave little Anna some sweets. The interaction with the people of Babylonia is an important driving force in the story, and this is further exemplified as you walk into the city, expecting a high security dictatorship with a starving populace type shit. But instead, you are greeted by this bustling and busy metropolis where people are working hard, smiling to survive another day. So when we do get an audience with King Gilgamesh, he explains that we are an excess, kicks us out, and tells us to work our way up by doing some odd jobs, basically telling us to get to know this era better before letting us interfere with it. The Gilgamesh here, albeit having the same bad attitude as his Fate Stay Night counterpart, is a little different. This Gilgamesh is the wise sage king, the one that has learned from all of his mistakes in life. He might not be as strong as he used to be, but now at least he knows where to direct all that strength at. Siduri, Gilgamesh's assistant, informs us where we can stay, and she'll be the one giving us tasks. After nightfall, the gang plus Siduri, along with some of the new friends there, Benkei, which is the guy that inspired Whitebeard's Last Stand, if you didn't know, Ushiwakamaru, who is Miyamoto no Yoshitsune's younger self, and Leonidas from the Battle of Thermopylae. All of them have a toast in the new Chaldean embassy. Just like Merlin, Benkei, Ushiwakamaru, and Leonidas were all summoned by Gilgamesh. And the next chapter basically plays out like a slice of life anime. Having a taste of mundane life in this era, we shear some sheep, train some troops, investigate an affair that leads to fighting underground snake people. Point being, Uruk is a fun and incredible city, even though humanity is on the brink of extinction. While Ritsuka was heading back to the Chaldean embassy, he ran across this old man. The old man is actually a disguised Hassan. I'm just gonna tell you that. He followed us all the way from the last singularity because he's just cool like that. Hassan gives us a cryptic prophecy / advice on how to deal with the three goddesses and leaves. After a hard day's work, the servants enjoy dinner with Siduri again, who also makes butter cakes for Anna. Up until now, Mash and Ritsuka have been reporting their mundane lives to King Gilgamesh, but while initially appearing indifferent, King Gil has appeared to take a liking to them. Gil then, based on our new rising public opinion, gives us our first mission, an expedition to the jungle. Anna and Merlin, who will be joining us, fills us in on what to do. We cross the Euphrates River and make our way to the southern jungle. On the way, Roman and Merlin tells us more about Tiamat because technically she has been the only one making an effort to kill humans. As we head deeper and deeper into the forest, we meet / fight Jaguar Warrior. I fucking hate Jaguar Warrior. She's like one of those cases where the heroic spirit summon just makes no sense. Like, who the hell is this supposed to be? Like, this isn't a historical figure. She didn't exist. She's not a god or anything, or nature or something. She just doesn't exist. And like, why do you have to do Taiga so fucking dirty like that? Fate Stay Night Taiga was actually not that good of a character, but you know, she was cool though. So why do you have to screw it up like this, okay? But anyways, Jaguar Warrior, despite her appearances, is actually very strong, but they managed to push her back. The group finally reaches the excommunicated city, Ur. They are surprised to see the city is functioning pretty normally, albeit a teensy bit depressing. Merlin, from the lack of men in the city, deduces that humans are being sacrificed to one of the goddesses. One of the citizens confirms that a single sacrifice is offered every day to the neighboring city of Eridu in exchange for protection. With knowledge on what's going on in the city, our heroes return to report their findings to Gilgamesh. Also, I gotta mention, there's a very powerful axe in Eridu too. It's gonna be important. It's like a MacGuffin here. Next morning, the king gives us an escort mission to transport water. On the pretext of taking a break, the king accompanies our heroes too. They reach an observatory at the edge of the Red Sea? Is it called the Red Sea? I fucking forgot what it's called. They reach an observatory that is on the shores of the Red Sea. While the king was taking care of business, Mash and Ritsuka were attacked by Kingu. Luckily, we were saved by Gilgamesh just in the nick of time. Next mission, Gilgamesh asks Mash, Ritsuka, Merlin, and Anna to find something called a Tablet of Destiny and look into Ishtar on their way to Kuta, another city that is currently facing problems. They successfully do both of that, forgetting the fact that Ritsuka accidentally fell into the underworld. This is where the slice of life segment sort of comes to an end, and all of the characters and Chekhov's guns are set in place. Gilgamesh gives us another mission, this one a more serious one, to evacuate the citizens of Nippur, while Benkei and Ushiwakamaru acts as distraction to lure the demonic beast out, and with Leonidas defending the wall, Ritsuka, Mash, Merlin, and Anna, along with a squadron of troops, advanced to Nippur, but they were too late, finding Kingu, revealing that all the humans had already been dragged back to the Blood Fort as livestock. What is the Blood Fort? It's just a temple for Tiamat. To make things worse, Tiamat finally emerges from her slumber, wiping out all the human troops. Just as our heroes were about to get no-diffed, Ushi rushes to Nippur, buying us time to retreat. Tiamat follows us all the way to the wall. In an effort to stop her, Leonidas and Ushiwakamaru unleashes their noble phantasm on Tiamat, but ultimately to no avail. With Leonidas dead and Ushi's fate left unanswered, our heroes are left dejected. Just as Tiamat was about to destroy the wall and all our heroes with it, Kingu, through a twist of logic, convinces Tiamat to retreat and give humanity some more time. Tiamat complies and heads back to her Blood Fort, promising 10 more days until the destruction of Uruk. Of course, after getting their ever-loving shit kicked out of them, our heroes are dejected. Even the honorable Benkei decided to stop fighting after letting Ushi die out there. But there are some ordinary soldiers inspired by the sacrifice of Leonidas who decide to stand back up and do whatever they can. Inspired by this sight, our heroes report all of this to Gilgamesh to think of a plan of counterattack. Based on the analysis of Dr. Roman and Merlin, the Tiamat we faced wasn't actually Tiamat, the primordial goddess herself, but Gorgon wielding the authority of Tiamat. What does authority mean? It sounds exactly how it works. People in this era believe her to be Tiamat, therefore she gains some extent of Tiamat's abilities. Gilgamesh draws a conclusion based on all of this information we have gathered that we should be getting the other two goddesses' help, since Ishtar is pretty cool and the goddess in Eridu is still technically protecting the people. Something you should note about Ishtar is she is basically just Rin Tosaka, but more bolder and much more greedy. So Gilgamesh entrusts 30% of Babylon's treasury to Ritsuka in order for him to buy an Ishtar. It goes just as well as you'd expect. Honestly, probably even better. The scenario that plays out is just pure comedy. Ishtar, after not that much hesitation, decides to join the party. Every night after this, Ishtar's sister, Ereshkigal, goddess of the underworld, takes over her body in order to converse with Ritsuka. I like Eresh. She is my favorite Rin face. She is Rin Tosaka, but more reserved. After getting back to Uruk, the goddess of Eridu, Quetzalcoatl, challenges us to come find her in Eridu or something and heads back there. We do exactly what she asks, Ritsuka fighting her head-on. Appreciating how earnest Ritsuka is, she also joins the party. Also, all the human sacrifices were actually all alive this entire time. They're just working in Eridu. Quetzalcoatl orders her men to transport the gigantic axe that I talked about earlier, the axe of Marduk, to Uruk because giant axes are probably gonna be useful sometime soon. Once we get back to Uruk, Siduri informs us that King Gilgamesh overworked to death. To make things even worse, more and more people in the city has been inflicted with this weird illness where their souls just leave their bodies. Being the loyal subjects we are, our heroes go to Kuta, open up a gate to the underworld to save him. While we were doing our thing, Ishtar gives us an initial impression that Ereshkigal is this strict and even monstrous deity that traps souls in cages. But after getting through Ereshkigal's trials and rescuing Gil, we finally meet the woman herself. She reveals that she wants to trap everyone's soul in the underworld so she can protect them from Tiamat, which honestly sounds pretty justifiable considering that things do be looking pretty hopeless up there. But after a few fights and Hassan popping up to do his thing, Arash releases the trapped souls and officially joins us, revealing that Arash was actually the third goddess in the Goddess Alliance, not Ishtar. Hassan tells Arash that death was a gentle thing in your hands, which I found to be very telling of both Hassan's and Arash's character. Hassan, while looking like this, was actually this understanding and profound thinker that treats death with respect. And Arash, while saddled with the responsibility of the underworld, still remained caring and kind to all the souls of the dead. Coming back from the underworld, our heroes, especially Gilgamesh, are celebrated like crazy. Like, think about it, Gilgamesh overworked to death but was like, job's not done yet, and straight up came back to life. Of course the people are gonna love him. The Chaldeans themselves were also very much appreciated by the citizens of Uruk, with some of them even going as far as to throwing them a party at the Chaldea embassy. One of them is this old lady that wanted to give Anna a floral headpiece, but sadly Anna wasn't present. You see, throughout this entire singularity, there is a subplot where Anna was helping this old lady that runs a flower shop. The old lady is blind and most probably neglected by her own children too. Anna, seeing this, decides to help her out. The old lady in turn tells her stories, treats her to cake, and treats Anna like her own grandchild. The old lady tells Ritska and Mash that when Ereshkigal's illness was going around, by illness, she probably means Ereshkigal kidnapping people's soul. But anyways, while this whole thing was going on, the old lady's children probably thought she finally kicked the bucket and that it was finally time to bury her, but it was due to Anna's insistence, the old lady did not get buried alive and is still alive today. Little things like these really help in fleshing out a certain character, so when the moment to play their parts comes, they goddamn perform. After reviewing our plan of action and with one day before Gorgon attacks Uruk, the general atmosphere in the city is surprisingly positive and optimistic. Ritska takes a late night walk before going to sleep and runs into Anna. Ritska uses this opportunity to give Anna the headpiece from the old lady, but Anna refuses the gift, revealing that the old lady's grandchild got killed by the demonic beast, which she feels partly responsible for since, well, she's Medusa and Gorgon is also Medusa, so she sort of feels guilty about part of her killed the old lady's grandchild indirectly. On the day of the attack, Ritska, Mash, Merlin, Anna, and Ishtar says their final goodbyes to the gatekeeper, which somehow managed to stay alive through all of this mayhem. Our heroes then head to the Blood Fort, which is located in the Cedar Forest, which is also the place where Kingu took us at the very start of the Singularity. While Quetzalcoatl and Jaguar Warrior distract Kingu and the rest of the demonic beasts at the wall, Quetzalcoatl, with some guidance from Merlin, throws the gigantic axe of Marduk all the way to the Blood Fort, destroying it and weakening Gorgon, because that's how authorities work. Our heroes rush into the throne room to confront Gorgon. The thing about Gorgon is, much like Anna, she hates humans because when she was alive as Medusa, everyone tried to kill her. So in order to get her revenge, she now wants to destroy all of humanity and repopulate the earth with demonic beasts. Our heroes fight Gorgon, but as Anna was about to land the final blow, the throne room collapsed. As the two of them are falling down, Anna deals the final blow to Gorgon. With Anna's purpose now fulfilled, she disappears into the void, smiling back at our protagonist. As a final gesture of goodwill towards our fallen comrade, Ritsuka places the floral headpiece by the place of Anna's demise. Before our heroes even acknowledge their own victory, Kingu rushes back to the Blood Fort, revealing that he has been using Gorgon all along to wake the real Tiamat up. With the fake Tiamat now dead, it sends a shockwave to the real Tiamat, waking her up. Even though Kingu only used Gorgon for his own means, he still vows to kill our heroes, especially Merlin, because everyone hates Merlin. And that is exactly what he does. Merlin dies. As Kingu leaves to attend the real Tiamat, the dying Merlin tells us to rush back to Uruk and tell Gilgamesh that one of the evils of humanity and a beast of disaster has arrived. All of this is implied to be Tiamat, obviously. As this was happening, weird silicon-like alien creatures were popping out all around Mesopotamia and killing ordinary people. And also, Grail mud water has been coming from the coast of Mesopotamia. We head back to find an Uruk up in flames under attack by these Lamu creatures as dubbed by Dr. Roman. Back in Gilgamesh's throne room, we report everything to Gilgamesh. We also find out that Siduri has been kidnapped by the Lamu and brought to a Lamu nest in Eridu. Naturally, our heroes head straight to Eridu to save her, even though Mesopotamia is pretty fucked. The Lamu are destroying Uruk, Grail mud water gonna flood Mesopotamia, and the fucking beast-class servant, an evil of humanity, is on her way to destroy all of civilization, but no biggie. As our heroes are heading out to Eridu, Mash notices that the gatekeeper is gone, lamenting that the once bustling city of Uruk has now been reduced to this sad and pitiful state. As they reach Eridu, they notice all the citizens have all been murdered, and the remaining captured humans are forced to kill each other in this sick game for the Lamu's entertainment. Our heroes, seeing this, are obviously pissed. They try to swoop in and save the humans, but even with two goddesses on their side, they face quite a hurdle. But luckily, Kingu, disgusted by his own siblings' actions, like I say siblings because the Lamu are children of Tiamat, and also Kingu is also a child of Tiamat. Anyways, Kingu attacks the Lamu himself. The Lamu then betray Kingu, stealing the Holy Grail, which was revealed to be Kingu's heart all along. Our heroes follow the Lamu that has the Holy Grail, leaving a heartless Kingu to his own fate. But luckily for him, while Kingu was surrounded by Lamu about to be killed, an abnormal Lamu, which is actually Siduri somehow turned to a Lamu, saves him. The Lamu, which I'm just gonna call Siduri, sacrifices herself, professing gratitude to Kingu/Enkidu on behalf of the citizens of Uruk for being a true friend to Gilgamesh. Just as the Grail was literally in our grasp, a corrupted Ushiwakamaru blocks our path, allowing the Lamu to deliver the Holy Grail to Tiamat. The bounded and restricted Tiamat now emerges from her slumber. Just as she was about to raise the entirety of our surroundings, our heroes sort of have no choice but to fight her now because she's just gonna get more powerful. But unknowingly, they destroyed Tiamat's seal or chains, leading to the emergence of Tiamat's true gargantuan form, the original sin of humanity. Quetzalcoatl tells us that with the way Tiamat is right now, the forces of everyone gathered in Mesopotamia can not so much as scratch her. Therefore, our heroes retreat all the way back to Uruk. Gilgamesh raises this fangs of something as a defense against the floodings of the mud. Our heroes make their way back to Gilgamesh's throne room to make their final plan of attack. Our briefing begins with a soldier reporting that there are only 500 survivors left in all of Babylonia. And to make things look even more hopeless, Dr. Roman analyzes that Tiamat is theoretically unkillable. It doesn't have any physical nor mythological weakness because Tiamat is a goddess of creation. As long as life exists on Earth, she is unkillable. Even in this hopeless situation, Ritska and Gilgamesh believes that it might be possible to kill Tiamat in the underworld, which Ereshkigal confirms to be true. But, slight problem. How the hell are they gonna get Tiamat down to the underworld? But fortunately, Ereshkigal, being the MVP goddess that she is, needs 3 days to prepare an operation to send Tiamat all the way down to the underworld. But also, slight problem, we only got 2 days before Tiamat reaches Uruk. There were some suggestions about using Ishtar's trump card, the Bull of Heaven, Gugalana, but it was shot down because she somehow lost it somewhere. Without a solution in mind, Gilgamesh adjourns the meeting so as not to let the mood sour even more. I don't usually like to bring this up, but the title of this chapter is called Star of the Beginning. We look up at the sky. It's cringy and it's corny, I know, but bear with me. It's important. After nightfall, Mash was taking a walk and she ran into Ishtar. Mash voices her appreciation for being able to learn from so many heroic spirits, not just in Babylon, but throughout this whole journey. And that's when Ishtar realizes why they are named Chaldea. Like the ancient observatory that watches the night sky, they observe the stories of the stars referring to the heroic spirits. They reach out to them not to use them, but to truly know them and to weave a story for all of them. Mash parts ways with Ishtar and joins Ritska to have one last talk with Gilgamesh. Immediately, Gilgamesh notices that the constant failures in Babylon have been putting quite a visible toll on Mash and Ritska. And in an effort to cheer them up, this is what he has to say. You told me that only 500 people survived from Sumer, didn't you? That's wrong. It wasn't only 500. It was the great number of 500. After all, this present is different than the one I saw. In my vision, I was the only one left in Uruk. But what now? It's true that the end can't be changed. Uruk's destruction cannot be averted. But 500 survived. Even if they die tomorrow, here at this final moment, that is how many people remain. I consider that a great achievement. The thing about Gilgamesh is that throughout this entire singularity, he has never once faltered or lamented about the hopeless situation, or at least not in a way that, say, Ritska or Mash does. Never once has he stopped working, and never once has he been shocked at how unfavorable the odds were stacked against him. That's because with his clairvoyance, he already foresaw everything up until this point, so he does not blame the Chaldeans for awakening Tiamat. One way or another, things would have already come to this point. 6 months before everything that happens now, Gilgamesh had already told all of the citizens of Uruk that destruction was inevitable, but despite certain death, the citizens of Uruk did not abandon their home, but chose to fight till the bitter end. Upon learning this, it wasn't pity that Mash felt for them, but pride as fellow humans. Gilgamesh assures Mash and Ritska everything that happens in Singularities will be inscribed in history. Even though the first dynasty of Uruk will eventually come to an end, the 500 lives that they saved will still have meaning, and the culture of Babylon will still survive. After their little talk, Gilgamesh runs into an old friend, or at least what remains of him. They don't say a lot, but Gilgamesh gives a spare Holy Grail to King Gu and walks away. Before this chapter, my initial impressions of Gilgamesh was that he was a sadistic asshole, and during this singularity, it's been, meh. I guess he's sort of okay. But after this chapter, he became one of the most beloved characters in the Fate franchise, or at least to me. This chapter is just that good. This chapter completely recontextualizes Gilgamesh's actions throughout this entire singularity. Even though he already knew literally everyone was gonna die, he still tried his hardest to save as much people as possible. It's visible in every scene and every chapter he appears in. He does his best to save them. When the Lamu captured Siduri, even though he already knew Siduri's fate, he still allowed Ritsuka and Mash to save her. Even when there are probably better uses for Holy Grail, he still decided to give it to King Gu to save his life. Before this chapter, Mash was undecisive and panicking at how things are constantly going from worse to worse, but after learning about the selflessness of the king and his people in showing humanity while facing these enormously impossible odds, that is what gives her the courage needed for the final fight. Next morning, Gilgamesh gives a briefing on what to do to slow Tiamat down. Gilgamesh basically tells us to unload everything we have on Tiamat and to aim for the legs. As our heroes leave Uruk, Gilgamesh gives one last impassionate speech to the last citizens of Uruk. He commends them for surviving through impossible odds and proclaims that this battle will be won to end the Age of Gods, their victory marking humanity's independence. With everyone's morale raised, our heroes head to their final battle. Right from the get-go, as we approach Tiamat, the corrupted Ushiwakamaru stops us, but Benkei finally decides to show up and sacrifices himself to take out his old friend. With the path now clear, Quetzalcoatl uses all her goddess powers to release her noble phantasm at the cost of her life, but it didn't really do that much. Luckily for us though, Gorgon, which is actually Anna, decides to help us out. We know this is Anna because Mash senses it, and this Gorgon puts an emphasis on the flowers Ritsuka left her. With that brief encounter, Gorgon/Anna decides to sacrifice herself to stop Tiamat, in turn breaking Tiamat's right horn. By the time we return to Uruk, the only life forms left in Uruk are 8 soldiers fighting off Lamu and Gilgamesh himself. As we reach the throne room, we look down and see the entirety of Uruk is engulfed in the now dubbed Chaos Tide. Tiamat just needs to take one more step before Uruk is completely destroyed. But within such a hopeless situation, Gilgamesh is as motivated as ever, firing all the weaponry on the ramparts at Tiamat, turning the entire fortress of Uruk into his noble phantasm. Inspired by this, Kingu/Enkidu decides to help his friend one last time. Kingu releases his noble phantasm to restrict Tiamat's movements using the chains of heaven. Through some kind of miracle, the both of them manage to buy enough time for Ereshkigal to bring the underworld underneath Uruk. But Gilgamesh, after taking a mortal wound from Tiamat, trying to protect Ritsuka, is at his limit. Before parting, he brazenly thanks Ritsuka for the mortal wound afflicted on him so that now he would finally have a way to exit the story. He tells Mash and Ritsuka, even if everything in this era has been called into service, I have a feeling it would have ended here. You are a foreigner, a foreign element in this period, and a surplus. However, That very surplus was the thing that helped us face destruction we alone could not have overcome, and help us make our final move. With that, he entrusts the fate of humanity to us. Ishtar blows a hole through Uruk, causing Tiamat to fall all the way down to the underworld. Now, with only Ereshkigal, Mash, and Litzka left, we face off against Tiamat's true form, Beast 2, and she has wings now, which means she can just fly out of the underworld. But with the Beast of Disaster properly summoned, the conditions are met. Merlin, through some servant loophole in the summoning system, is back now, and the first Hassan finally reveals himself as the Grand Assassin, cutting off both of Tiamat's wings. Even with the extra firepower, Beast 2 is still standing. But through another miracle, Gilgamesh returns, but this time as the King of Heroes. Our heroes fought valiantly, and in the end, we're victorious. Holy shit. It's been a long battle. This entire fight with Tiamat has been like 5 chapters long. It's been crazy, honestly. And this entire project has been just as crazy as well. Like, it's took me way too much time to even get to this point. So, I'm grateful to whoever's still even watching this shit all the way to this point. Before returning to Chaldea, we say our last goodbye to the Babylon cast, or at least to whoever's still alive. We say goodbye to Quetzalcoatl, Ishtar, and even Jaguar Warrior. I don't even hate her as much now. The parting this time was especially painful because we've spent the most time in Babylon, and along with it, we've spent the most time with this cast. They have been incredible. Gilgamesh bade us farewell and asked us how was Uruk. Of course, no hesitation, it has been a city like no other. Hearing this, Gilgamesh gave us wheat ale as souvenir from Uruk. As he leaves, Mash notices that the cup he used for the ale was the holy fucking grail. After this, we also say goodbye to Merlin. My boy has been helping us out a lot. He has been with us since day one. He tells us that he may not like humans individually, but he likes the pattern that humans weave into these stories. But the thing with us is that we are sort of like travelers that journeys between books, using these stories to weave a better ending for everyone. And so, our actions are something only Merlin can appreciate. We thank Merlin and finally return to Chaldea. Cutting to Chaldea without missing a beat, Roman and the Chaldean crew have finally located the final singularity, the Grand Temple of Time. We start off the singularity with a prelude showing Marisbury and his servant Castor after winning the 5th Holy Grail War. Keep in mind, this is the only time we get to know anything about Marisbury. Marisbury starts off joking with his servant but gets more serious when he talks about his end goal. He wants to reach the root like most other mages, but he doesn't want to go about it through the Holy Grail because of his pride as a mage or something. He proclaims that he will be using the Holy Grail for raising funds in order to power Chaldea, and asks what Castor's wish will be. By now, you've probably guessed Castor is Solomon, because there are like literally no other casters relevant to the story at this point anymore. Merlin's arc has already finished. Da Vinci just does not fit. Throughout this entire prelude, Marisbury treats Solomon as a friend, but as for Solomon, he critiques that Marisbury lacks morality, so the two's relationship sort of remain unclear. Even so, it's clear that Marisbury does all of this to save humanity, or at least that's what Solomon's impression of him is. Maresbury grants Solomon permission to wish for anything other than his life, which just sounds very weird, and Solomon proceeds to do so. Cutting to a black screen, Solomon sends Mash one of those weird visions/dreams to Mash, trying to convince her that a life without death is cool by showing her these visions of a utopia of eternity. But Mash remains unswayed as she disagrees with Solomon. The King of Mages, unsatisfied with Mash's answer, gives up on trying to convince her. Solomon, or whoever this Solomon is, has an apparent soft spot for Mash because part of him wants to hear someone validate his plan by saying death sucks. And who better to do that than Mash, someone that is literally on death's doors. So yeah, you're probably wondering by now who the fuck is Solomon, since this entire game revolves around him. Other than the things you already know, Solomon has clairvoyance that can observe both the past and the future. He is also known as the most powerful summoner since, he can summon 72 demon gods, which that technique is called Goetia, by the way, just so you know. He also has 3 noble phantasm called Ars Nova, Ars Paulina, which is the Grand Temple, and Ars whatever the hell this is, which is the bands of light in the sky. His most famous story is him returning his 10 rings back to God after only using it once. Back at Chaldea, Da Vinci tells Ritsuka that Mash doesn't have long to live, like after this operation, she's dead, like no matter what. Roman breaks the same news to Mash, but Mash isn't surprised. This has been a long time coming for her, and she takes the news well. Ritsuka joins Mash as the two head to the command room. Ritsuka requests Mash to sit this mission out. Mash appreciates Ritsuka's concern but refuses. Wishing to honor Mash's life and journey, Ritsuka allows her to finish her own chapter with her own hands. The two agree and are as motivated as ever to finally put an end to this story. Without much time for small talk, Roman and Da Vinci send our duo off to the Grand Temple of Time, Solomon. Immediately, Lev Laner shows up to stop our heroes. Mash asks Lev if he truly intended to betray humanity from the very beginning. Lev confirms that to be the case. He credits Chaldea making it this far because of Roman. He reveals that he has been suspicious of Roman since day one but failed to kill him off in Chaldea's explosion back in the start because of Ritsuka. With King Solomon busy, Lev sends 8 demon gods to take care of Chaldea, and Chaldea gets absolutely destroyed. In this singularity, the entire Chaldea facility is transported into this singularity because actually I don't even know the lore implications of the Chaldean facility being here. I guess it's just for transportation reasons and YOLO. So yeah, things are going pretty bad. With Mash being overwhelmed, it was only a matter of time until the hordes of demon gods get to Ritsuka. Ritsuka, at that moment, thought to himself, maybe, just maybe, it was all pointless after all. But just like an answer to his thoughts, a sea of stars soars across the black sky as you hear a familiar voice. It's far too early to give up. All of human history has heard Ritsuka's plea to reclaim the future, and all the heroes of human history, all the heroic spirits that we have crossed paths with, answered the call of this one human. That Avengers Endgame shit will never stop being cool. I don't care if you call it corny or whatever, but that will always be cool to me, okay? With the scales now evenly tipped, all the servants fend off the demon gods to buy Mash and Ritsuka a chance to confront the King of Mages. Throughout this entire game, there are these visions that shows the sorrows of mankind, and it is clear that all of these visions were from the perspective of the King of Mages. It's implied that he does not hate humans as a whole originally. Instead, he hates the sorrows that humanity creates. So therefore, he concludes that he hates humanity as a whole. That is later confirmed as the King of Mages reveals his plans to us. As we reach the throne room and fight for a while, the king finally decides to reveal the true nature of the incineration of humanity. This act isn't to destroy humanity, but to use it as fuel instead. He reveals his true identity. Turns out he isn't the Grand Caster, Solomon, but instead he is one of the evils of humanity, a beast of disaster, Gacha, the king of demon gods. Gacha is Beast 1, and he is also Solomon's shadow. His entire plan is to use humans as fuels to send him back 4.6 billion years in the past for him to recreate a new sapient species without the concept of death. So the stage is Sep, an immortal being fighting to destroy the concept of death while normal mortals fight to preserve it. Gacha gets serious and finally decides to deploy his third noble phantasm, the Bands of Light, to destroy our heroes. Our heroes are ultimately unsuccessful at disrupting his noble phantasm. Gacha attempts one last time to convince Mash to join him, even appealing to Ritsuka to at least save her. Gacha relates with Mash because, much like Gacha, Mash is a man-made lifeform made to serve a singular purpose. Sympathizing with her short lifespan, Gacha wants approval from someone like her, an ordinary girl that knows of no evils. As we have journeyed across the world with Mash, we already know of Mash's answer. Mash rejects Gacha's eternity, stating that a world without endings is ultimately wrong. Even if my life ends in the blink of an eye, I'd still want to see every second of it. Gacha unleashes his noble phantasm, and Mash chants the words we are also familiar with and deploys the white walls of Camelot. It was like time had stopped. Nothing on Earth existed that could stop those bands of light. But that was only if one thought in terms of physical laws. Her defense was a shield of the psyche. If there was no impurity and no hesitation within it, its invincible walls would never melt or break. I knew that. Of course. The walls of her castle could defend even against my third noble phantasm. That hellish moment continued as she blocked the heat that would pierce the planet. She thought of the journey so far, and the journey to come. She thought of her past, and of the future she would not be there for. Mash tells Ritsuka, "I'm glad. This should open up a path for you. Thank you for everything. I wanted to pay you back for everything you gave me. And now, finally, I feel like my life had value. Like Captain Drake said, at the very end, I realized my wish." That is right. Even after all those battles, it still was not nearly enough for her. That was how strong her gratitude was, even if it all started with a simple chance meeting one morning.
ありがとうございます。先輩。
Behold the result. Her body could not take the heat from the bands of light and evaporated. But her heart remained untouched, and her snowflake shield remained unscathed as it protected her master to the end. That's why we wanted her approval. That's why I say that she was neither a brave warrior nor the protagonist of the story. In the end, she was simply an ordinary girl. That was just beautiful. But, the story's not over yet, okay? I'm gonna continue. Inspired by Mash's actions, Dr. Roman finally decides to take his role on the big stage. Removing his gloves, he reveals the 10th ring of Solomon. He reveals that the original King Solomon sent this ring into the future on a whim and was eventually found by Marisbury. After getting summoned and winning the Holy Grail War, Solomon then wished to become human, adopting the identity of Romani Archaman. Just before Solomon became human, his clairvoyance gave him a vision of the coming end of humanity. But as his powers left him, he could do nothing. With no knowledge of who the enemy is or when the end might come, Roman then spent the next 10 years relearning to be human and gathering knowledge from around the world, and luckily, it was all enough to get Ritsuka to this point. Roman reverts back to King Solomon for him to reenact the myth of him returning his rings of omnipotence to the heavens. His first noble phantasm, Ars Nova, he who surrenders the world.
祖はすべてを治める。体感の時来たれり、祖はすべてを始めるの。そして決別の時来たれり、祖は世界を手放すのみ。アリス。
With the rings now returned, the Temple of Time will gradually lose its power, and Solomon, along with the rest of the demon gods, including Goetia, will also gradually disappear. But Goetia still believes that he has enough time to carry out his plan. As Roman's body begins to disappear, he orders Ritsuka for the last time to stop Goetia. Ritsuka thanks Roman, and we finally fight Beast 1 Goetia. After a very hard gameplay fight, I think it's the hardest fight in the game so far, we finally defeat Goetia. With all the other demon gods being taken care of by the servants, a dying Goetia asks Ritsuka why fight so hard to resist him. And Ritsuka simply answers to live, which is ironic because Ritsuka's fear of death is so strong that it's enough to destroy Goetia's plan to remove it. With debris crushing the fallen Goetia, it ends his 3,000 years of meticulous planning. Da Vinci informs Ritsuka to head to the gate of the throne room in order for him to reshift back to Chaldea. With all the servants parting ways, Gilgamesh drops by and also drops some foreshadowing for the future, but right now it isn't that important. Ritsuka escapes through the crumbling temple, but as he almost makes it to the exit, his path is barred by a crumbling Goetia. With a few more hours to live, Goetia finally understands the mentality of humans. With nothing left to lose, he challenges Ritsuka to a meaningless battle of pride, with Ritsuka putting his life on the line. Ritsuka defeats Goetia and finally continues his last stretch home. With one more step to go, The floor crumbles beneath his feet. He was literally one step away. And I'm gonna pause you there, not for dramatic purposes, but because I'm gonna need to explain something else for this next thing to make sense, because in the game it didn't really make that much sense until much more later. So yeah, here it goes. While all of this was happening, Mash's will is visited by Foe, or as he calls himself, Taf Palog. Foe has his first and last conversation with Mash, stating that he is one of the 7 evils of humanity, the same as Goetia and Tiamat. He is the beast of comparison. He tells Mash that he feeds off the envy of men, but he is able to remain as an harmless animal when kept away from human society. That's why he was held at Avalon along with Merlin, but after a while, the sage kicked him out, and that's how he ended up at Chaldea. He tells Mash that he will perform a miracle that true magic could not even achieve, transferring his own future to hers, but all of this at the cost of Foe's power, intellect, and personality. Foe reassures Mash that things will remain the same as it's always been, but says he feels a little lonely going out this way. That's why he came all this way to say goodbye to Mash, expressing gratitude to our heroes for showing him a truly wonderful journey. Foe's last words to Mash are the following. When the mage sent me out, he told me, "Go experience all the beauty the world has to offer." And, well, I have seen truly beautiful things. There are some evils that can be defeated without shedding blood or crossing blades, and that is what made this possible. Congratulations to you, the wonderful people of Chaldea. You have defeated Beast 6 without so much as a single blow. With the occurrence of what can only be described as another miracle, Ritsuka hears a familiar voice, one he can never mistake. In a parallel to the start of the game, where Ritsuka saved Mash's life by holding out his hand to get ray-shifted, this time, it is Mash's turn to save Ritsuka's life as the story comes to a close. Damn, that was one hell of a journey. 2.5 hours. It's been just as long for you as it has been for me. Probably even longer, but you get what I mean. But before you get even more sick of my monotone voice, I still have a little more to say. What I want to say is that there is still a lot more to this game. If anything, you've probably just seen the prologue. There is still part 1.5, part 2, and then part 2.5. The game will go on and it will only go up from there. From the sorrows you face in the Lost Belts to the tragedy of the Cryptors, from the witch trials in Salem all the way to the Game of Thrones style politics of the Britain Lost Belt, there is still so much more to experience in this game. So to the 2 people watching, if you're really gonna play FGO, then allow me to give you one piece of advice. Truly immerse yourself in the story and the characters. Immerse yourself, because beyond this blue sky lies my gift to you, the greatest story ever told through gacha games. Thank you to whoever is still watching this. Genuinely, I'm grateful. I still have 2 videos that I plan to make, but before that, it's probably gonna be a while before my next upload since Silk Song is coming out. Also, apparently, I need to sit here for another 30 seconds since YouTube needs time for me to put up a video right now. So if you're interested, by all means, that's it. Thank you.